member of the Reform UK Party and former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Kevin. Good afternoon.
My feelings, for what it's worth, is, I think her heart is in the right place. She's absolutely right. 1951 UN conventions set up to help people in the slipstream of the Second World War, concerned about 2 million people at the time. I mean, they're not fit for purpose in 2023.
I thought it was an utterly first-class speech. She exposed the problem absolutely as it is, all the way from it posing a national existential threat to, both politically as well as culturally, that the nation state itself was being undermined by these kinds of unbridled migration. She talked more broadly about the problem of multicultural migration, which of course can be illegal and legal. And what we've seen, Kevin, as you and I know very well, is massive legal migration as well, which is called multiculturalism in this country, being practiced effectively in silos as opposed to society evolving homogeneously into a cohesive, better society as a result of what she described as manageable migration. I thought it was an excellent exposition. She even nodded at how the Operation Sovereign Borders that Australia had instituted had worked so well in 2013 and 2014. But there was a complete absence, I thought, if I may just criticise Suella.
I was going to say, I've got some down points to make. You make yours now.
Yeah. So there was a complete absence of recognition of the need of countries across the globe to take unilateral action. Ultimately, it's not about asylum or deportations and the right to deport. Ultimately, it's about people who wish to enter your country illegally, recognizing that they will not be allowed to do it. And the first resistance that you've got to offer, which the Poles did in the example that she gave of Putin marching people to the Polish border through Belarus, which the Australians did very effectively, the first bit of resistance you've got to give, and you've got to give it firmly, and it's a physical form of resistance, is at your border. We are not exercising border control. The European Union countries are not exercising it, the United Kingdom's not exercising it, and the US has given up on it. And unless we rediscover the political will and courage to actually police and enforce our borders, this problem is going to continue. The migrants who got to Lampedusa should have been stopped before they got to the island, and they should have been forced to go back to Libya or wherever it was that they came from.
Yeah, look, I'm with you all the way. I thought that her heart is very much in the right place. Everything she said was a very skilled and intelligent analysis of everything that is wrong about our current global asylum system. Fine. And she zoned right in on what's wrong in terms of who can get asylum. This quite shocking revelation that under the current rules, as many as 780 million people around the world would qualify for asylum here in Britain. All of that, fine and dandy. What I would like, though, that's all theoretical. She stands there as a Home Secretary with one of the worst migrant crises in the world. Funnily enough, not quite as bad as America's, but one of the worst migrant crises in the world. And all she's doing is giving us an academic speech. Well, what is she going to do about it? If you're moaning about the United Nations Refugee Convention, can't we leave it? If you're moaning about the European Convention on Human Rights, I know we can leave that. Why doesn't she do that? And as I say, I don't want to over-criticise her. I don't think she's going to win Orator of the Year award, but the contents of that speech were very good. But what we're looking for here, Ben, is action. And there was was no sign of action. It was once again cap in hand to the international community. Can't we all get together and work something out? No, no, no.
Well, that's the point.
Why can't we do
Kevin.
something ourselves right now? Because we are at a point of critical mass with our migrant crisis, and I think she should be talking about quitting the ludicrous 1951 UN Convention on Refugees, and definitely quitting the European Convention on Human Rights, because then we could start to do something about our crisis, right?
Well, you're absolutely... Well, we can do something about our crisis straight away, but you're absolutely right. She talked about the importance of nation states. She talked about the importance of protecting our political institutions as well as our culture. And then she completely skirted over the need for unilateral action. The word is unilateral. We've got to stop well, we can go on having bilateral arrangements if they work. Certainly the one with France doesn't work. And she can go on the international stage making brilliant speeches requiring reform of the Refugee Convention, UNHCR on human rights, the ECHR, the European Convention of Human Rights. All of that needs reform or us to withdraw. But in the meantime, we are an independent country. We have agency. We have international law on our side. We have the right to stop people illegally entering our country. And frankly, our government has an obligation to stop people from illegally entering our country. And we need a unilateral action taken by the government, which is, I think, the point you're making, Kevin. And that's the stark absence in her brilliant exposition. After going through all of that, and the only examples that she could give that worked were countries that actually took physical action to stop it from happening. Yeah. And that's what we've got to do. Go on trying to reform. Go on arguing the case against the ECHR. By all means, of course, do all of that. But for goodness sake, get a grip of our borders right now. Yeah, we need border force trained and put in the channel to do their job, to turn those boats around.
You're absolutely right, to show some resolve, because the speech, as we both agree, decent speech, but no action, all talk. But one thing I did like, Ben, was her complaints about who qualifies to be a migrant and asylum seeker right now. And she is quite right, isn't it? The way the system is now, basically, if you don't like where you live, I don't like my neighbour much, or these people, I'm gay and they're not very nice to me, or I'm a woman and women don't have rights here, that cannot be a qualification to come and live in Britain. That's just a certain disquiet with your life. Oh, I'm not that happy here. I know, I'll move to Britain. That has to stop. And that's something that we could do unilaterally, couldn't we? Couldn't we define exactly what qualifies you to successfully seek asylum in this country? And by that I mean excluding the fact you're gay, or you're a woman, or you're a bit worried about discrimination.
Well, the problem we've got in our country, and I think it affects most Western liberal democracies, is that we're obsessed now with diversity, equality and inclusion. And we see everyone who's from an ethnic minority, and people often see me as from an ethnic minority, as somehow being disadvantaged, somehow needing a leg up, somehow needing a protective blanket. We've become so weak in our treatment of people, in our attempts to treat people equally, that we've become progressively discriminatory. And that same discrimination is being applied when it comes to these people who would wish to enter our country illegally. We treat them as if they are literally abused children because they are of a different color. They come from a country where life is a bit tougher than it is in the United Kingdom. And we've got to stop that. This is like Rome 400 AD. We've lost our stiff upper lip as a society, and we've replaced it with a quivering lower one. And we've got to just get a bit more resolve in our society, recognize everyone's equal, get rid of this diversity, equality and inclusion, get rid of this notion that you've got to put a protective blanket around anyone and everyone who might have some kind of impediment that prevents them from competing on a level playing field. And we've got to just get back to basics. And the basics in this subject is stopping people at the point of entry.
Absolutely. And in case people fear that Britain will be seen as inhumane, and people in Britain do. There are a lot of bleeding heart people who are terrified of that prospect. Think about what we give migrants when they turn up here. We put them in a 4-star hotel. We give them 45 quid a week. We give them free food for as long as they like, all the rights in the world. When they're in France, which doesn't get criticised for the way it treats migrants, they're lucky if they get a tent. They don't even get a roof over their heads. So that's another aspect of Britain's situation that we need to look at. We need to stop being the fall guy for people who say we're racist and we're anti-migrant. We're not. We're very good to them. The French, for example, are not. It was a great speech, but it was a better analysis, Ben. Thank you so much. Ben Habib, a member of the Reform UK Party and a former Brexit Party MEP, with his analysis.